Remake Rewind.
Thank you for listening to yet another episode of Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decide if remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always. With me, I've got my buddy Alex. How are you doing, man?
Heyo! It's me.
That's my buddy Alex. Hey.
I got a new mic, so I feel the need to explore all of the diverse corners of the boundaries of sonic ambiance that I have available at my tongue tips.
Well, I'm really excited for you, but I've got some bad news for you, man. We need to print a retraction from our last episode.
Oh no.
So I don't have a name, and this person did say that they didn't want the voicemail on the podcast, but we did get a voicemail on our hotline. So thank you for calling.
Thank you.
By the way, but we got a call, and I incorrectly said that Nia DaCosta, the director of the newer Candyman movie from this year, hadn't directed a feature. I said it was her first feature. And so I was wrong. And this person let me know. And I do appreciate being told. Initially, like, I was going to defend it and be like, well, I meant major studio release. But reflecting, I kind of felt like that was kind of a shitty way to, like, look at it. Because, like, no matter what, if you're making a feature film, whether it's independent or studio, like, it's still a major achievement. Yeah. And I completely just, like, I missed it. And I was going to rationalize it. And that was wrong. And I'm very proud of Nia DaCosta for making a full feature film and then getting Candyman, which we gave a glowing review of a couple weeks ago. So I'm a big enough man to admit when I was wrong, and I was wrong, and I appreciate whoever left that voicemail letting me know that we were incorrect, so we can let our fans know that what's going on, because she's gonna have a great career. She's gonna move on and do the Marvels. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens with Nia DaCosta's career, because her first movie that I saw was a home run to me. So
yeah,
there, I was wrong, and I just had to admit it.
Yeah.
Funny enough, we're going to do another movie with Tony Todd, and I had no idea Tony Todd was in this when I
know.
selected
I was
it.
stoked about that connection.
Yeah, so we're doing the original 1968, kind of the origin of zombie movies, the modern zombie, Night of the Living Dead, directed by George Romero, and the 1990 remake directed by George Romero's friend and special effects guru, Tom Savini.
Mike.
Yes.
Do you realize that the amount of time that has passed between the original Night of the Living Dead and the remake is the same amount of time that has passed between now and the original Matrix?
Oh. Yeah, it sounds, yeah.
Let that bake your noodle for a minute.
Oof. I thought you were going to say that since the two remakes, like, we could have had another remake, which, funny enough, I'm just going to say this at the top. The only reason the 1991 got remade with George Romero, like, on the team, he didn't direct it, but, you know, obviously it's his screenplay, was they forgot to put the copyright on the original one from 1968. So they were concerned that there was going to be a bunch of unauthorized remakes, which there are. There are about half a dozen other Night of the Living Dead remakes.
I think there's also Return of the Living Dead is a kind of a different situation, but there's a lot of the Living Dead
Return of the Living Dead had some lawsuits because the co-writer of the original movie is the one who made that franchise, right. And they came out around the same time as Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, and it's a different situation because they feel some ownership there. But there are definitely a lot of the Living Deads that are not connected in any way that got away with it because there's no copyright on the original movie. Yeah. And they showed it in on a bunch of TV a whole bunch, and Romero never got any money from that, which sucks.
Nope, because they just forgot to put the copyright mark on the movie when they made it.
Yeah,
so,
one of the classic blunders of American horror cinema.
And speaking, like you said, classic cinema. This movie, it redefined zombie. Now, they don't say zombie in this movie. They call them ghouls in the movie. But this kickstarted the zombie craze that's been going on for, 60, 70 years now. That's still going. We've still obviously got The Walking Dead going on. Later, by the time this episode drops, later this month, we've got Back for Blood, another zombie game that's from the creators of the Left 4 Dead series. So, like, zombies never left the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and this movie is also like, this movie is taught in film school. It is classic cinema. Yeah, this movie is also like a watermark in horror film history, and to that end, like, this movie has, or modern zombie movies have more in common with this movie than, say, modern slasher movies have in common with Psycho.
Yeah,
You know what
absolutely.
I mean? Like, less has changed because they hit the nail on the head so well in 1968.
Oh, absolutely. And what's crazy is like this version. So if you go and watch it on HBO Max, which is where we watched it, HBO Max sponsor us.
I got a funny story about that.
But this version was actually digitally restored for the Criterion Collection and also the Museum of Modern Art, and it was actually paid for by George Lucas to get this print restored. And it's a beautiful print. Like, it looks fantastic. The contrast is great, and it looks fantastic for the movie this old.
You told me that last week via text message, and
or an SMS alert,
and I completely forgot when I went to watch the movie. So I watched the fucking 720p garbage transfer from Stars like a fucking peasant, Mike.
You idiot.
I went back. I realized what I had done today when I watched the 1990 remake, and I went to double check the one on HBO Max just to like make sure that I was in fact an idiot, and also to see how much better the quality was. And let me tell you, it looks so much better. I'm going to rewatch it just because I want to see the transfer again. I want to see the better transfer.
It's super sharp. I was so impressed with it because I've seen this movie. It's been a very, very long.
Sorry, I was going to say double fucking idiot move. I have it on Blu-ray. I just forgot, and I looked up. I was like, "Hey Siri, show me Night of the Living Dead," and I watched it on Stars.
Oh man,
on my expiring Stars subscription.
So I've always been into zombie stuff. I was going to save this story. I mean, I'm going to save this story. People who have listened to our Dawn of the Dead episode from our first Halloween special a couple years back know the story, but eventually we'll cover Dawn of the Dead again. But I was affected by like zombie movies from a really young age, and the first zombie movie I ever actually saw was
that's because growing up, your uncle was a zombie, right? So you have sort of a connection.
Yes, my uncle zombie. But like I saw the 1991 clips from it. Like there's this, we'll get into it when the scene comes up, but there's a scene that's like seared into my brain, and I remember that scene. And then I saw this one when I was in like third grade. And I haven't really seen this one since, but the ending of this movie, like really all I remember are the bookends of the movie, the start and then the very, very end of the movie.
Right.
But the end of this movie is on like so many lists of like greatest endings or greatest surprise endings and whatnot. So I really, really remembered the bookends of this movie. So I was really excited to go back and watch the whole thing, because it's been, as a zombie fan, I should probably go back and revisit this one way more than I have. But yeah, I'm really excited to get to it and talk about it. Do you want to summarize this one or the second one?
Having read your synopsis, I'll do the second one.
Okay. So this one, 1968, directed and written by George Romero with some help from John Russo. Barbara and Johnny go to visit their father's grave, which is like 200 miles away. Johnny's complaining about it, and he's like, well, why isn't our lazy mom coming with us? kind of thing. And while they're visiting the father's grave, a ghoul attacks Barbara, and Johnny defends her and gets killed. And so she runs out to an abandoned house, and she is soon joined by Ben, who's kind of the hero of the film. And then later on, they're joined by Harry, Helen, Tom, Judy, and Karen, who's the daughter of Harry and Helen. And they kind of have this like struggle over how they should post up in this abandoned farmhouse. And, there's a struggle between the humans on how they're going to survive the night of the living dead.
Nice.
So
that's what happens.
I mean,
that's accurate.
It's a simple, bare bones plot.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very simple film. And, there's obviously we'll hit some of the bigger plot points, but I mean, there's not really a way you can summarize that movie any more succinctly.
Yeah, they get stuck in a house, and they have to battle ghouls from outside and also within.
Oh, I like that. One of the things that
I was gonna say again, like that's so similar to Walking Dead. Like, not a whole lot has changed in 50
it's constantly
50
that.
fucking years.
Yeah. The thing that I was a little confused about, because you and I have discussed, we did Land of the Dead and Army of the Dead a few months back when that dropped on Netflix. And one of the big things with Land of the Dead was the fact that the zombies were getting smarter and using tools. And one of the things that surprised me about this was that the zombies were pretty smart. Now, this was kind of like a prototype to his zombie films, and they evolved, and they kind of got dumbed down the line. But like the zombies pick up bricks and start smashing the windows, and they understand like
Karen
how to
kills
open
her
doors.
mom with a spade.
Yeah,
I forgot that they used tools in this movie.
yeah. So they use tools. They also understand, like they have fear, like they're afraid of fire at several points in this movie, and they recognize fire, and they'll like actually run away from things. So like there's, they're not strategic or anything like that, but they do have a little bit more instinct, I guess, than subsequent of the Dead films had.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, two things. We watched Land of the Dead when Army of the Dead came out, right? And I feel like the big thing about the zombies in that movie is that they learned how to start using tools, and I guess to communicate a little bit. That's sort of the other big things happening in the movie. But they made such a big deal about them being able to use tools now. When I went back and watched this, I was like, oh yeah, they've kind of been able to do that for a while.
Right. And even like if you go back to Dawn of the Dead, they don't actively pick up tools and use them, but like one of the main characters, when he gets turned into a zombie, has a gun in his hand when he dies. And so like he kind of breaks some glass with it, but that was like totally accident. But like this was on purpose. I was really surprised to see that. I was kind of thrown, and I kind of felt like it was wrong, but obviously this came first. So, but to be fair, none of the other of the Dead movies are technically direct sequels to any of the other ones, because they never actually had the rights to all the other movies. So each one you can say is in their own space.
Yeah, it's weird, right? They also like have different characters, so like they could be in the same universe but in a different space, but they don't reference each other, so they're not really. So it's kind of just like these are different stages of the zombie apocalypse. Here's where it first happens with this small group of people, and this other one's about this other group of people in a different place, and it's not connected, but it is also like this amount of time further down the line if this thing happened.
So I think we should address, and this it's funny enough, we did this last episode with Candyman, where there were some race issues that we didn't tiptoe around. We addressed them as best as we can in our our experiences as cis white males in America, but recognizing that the Candyman movies are largely about white privilege. Excuse me one sec. George Romero cast Dwayne Jones as Ben, who's kind of like the hero of this film. And this film kind of like opens up in a unique way. Like the first 10 minutes or so is really from like Barbara's point of view. Yeah. She gets attacked in the graveyard, and then she, gets in a car and pulls the emergency brake and rolls down the hill and gets away, and then goes into the abandoned house and kind of does her own thing for the first 10 minutes until Ben shows up, and then he kind of takes the protagonist role at that point. So kind of like flips your expectations for this, but he's a black man being the lead of this horror film, and this is like the first time that ever happened, and he slaps Barbara.
Oh, I thought you meant he's awesome. I thought
he's fantastic.
His acting skills,
he's really good in this. And then he like slaps Barbara because she's acting hysterical, and then she ends up going like into this like catatonic state for most of the movie, and then he really takes on the leadership and protagonist role, and like any one of those things would be a big deal. And George Romero says he didn't consciously make that decision when he cast Dwayne Jones. Dwayne Jones in interviews said that he understood the ramifications of this when he got cast, and that it was a big deal. I honestly, like, part of me doesn't believe George Romero, because like all of his movies have so much symbolism and social commentary that I find it hard to believe it wasn't on purpose. But he never, in the 50 years after this movie came out until he died, changed his answer in regards to race. But like, I find it hard to believe that he didn't make that decision consciously.
Yeah, seems like it probably would have crossed his mind.
Yeah,
maybe he's just that big of a badass. He's just that humble.
Maybe. Yeah, he just didn't want to take credit. Because at the end of the movie, spoilers for this movie that's, 60 years old, Ben survives the whole movie. He makes it through the night. A posse comes around with the sheriff that's going around the county cleaning up the zombies. And he pops up on a window, and like the cops and the posse just shoot him in the head, and he dies. And, that's a pretty grim ending. And, considering it's 1968, like you can't help but think that this is like a commentary on civil rights. A lot of other people think this movie's a commentary on the Cold War and the fear that we had of Vietnam and everything. And that's why it's black and white, to kind of simulate the newsreels. And then for the Cold War, they say what caused the zombie. Like, this is the only movie of the Romero films that kind of even hints at the origin of the zombies. Mm-hmm. And they say it's because of a satellite went next to a planet and picked up some radiation and came back, and the radiation is what reactivated the brains of the ghouls.
Yeah.
So
or something.
Something to that effect. So
yeah, the ending of the movie makes me think about. I'm glad you said Vietnam, because it makes me think about how the United States government just sent all these black soldiers to Vietnam, and they're out there fighting and dying for our country. And it's a common thing with Vietnam soldiers in general, that they got treated like shit when they came home. But I think the black soldiers essentially are forgotten. Meanwhile, they've given their lives.
Well, you also look at 1968. You have MLK and Malcolm X, assassinated, and that's kind of the end of this movie. Here's a heroic black man killed by some white guys in the South.
Yeah.
So, and there's a dynamic, like, here's an intelligent man who has shown to be smart and capable. Like, throughout the movie, he's like, he ran out of gas. That's how he ended up at this farm. And the whole movie, he's trying to find, like, the keys to the gas. There's like a little gas pump just down the road on the farmhouse. And he's trying to find these keys. And he's, like, butting heads with, this stereotypical 1960s, head of the family white man who, is a coward in this situation. He wants to hide in the cellar. Ben wants to go, well, that's fine, but we should absolutely board up the windows and everything first, because if they get in, we're never getting out of the cellar. So let's board all this stuff up. And there's this power struggle. And so I just found that to be really interesting. And I'm surprised that George Romero, even if it wasn't true, didn't go back and say, what, at the time I couldn't say this was a black power movie, but now that we're 30 years removed, I can. I'm honestly surprised that didn't happen.
Yeah, it feels very similar to the Candyman. The director of that movie was talking about it and sort of said, or no, I don't think it was the director. I think it was the black folks that they consulted with. It wasn't NAACP, but it was some figures in the black community, some authority figures or whatever. And they said something like, why can't there be a black serial killer? Why not? Like, why would we be upset about this? And it feels like George Romero was kind of the same thing with his character in 1968. Like,
right.
Why can't I have a black protagonist that saves people from zombies? Like, why not?
Sorry, I'm just like looking at my notes, and like the way I write my notes, a little bit about like how the sausage is made.
BTS.
I write some notes, like I write notes as I'm watching the movie, but if there's something that I really want to call out, I put it in bold. And sometimes I don't necessarily remember what it is, and then other times I do. But in this particular case, I was reading this note, and one of the when Ben first shows up at the house, there are a couple zombies in the house that Barbara just kind of like just kept running away from, but they didn't really deal with, and they groan. One he hits in the face with a tire iron, and it like he goes, ah, and then the zombie makes a groaning sound and like touches its face, which, another kind of more human aspect of the zombie. But eventually like he kills a zombie and he's like moving with Barbara throughout the house and he's just like, don't look at it. And he just yells at her. It's really funny note that I have on there. It's just an extreme reaction to that.
Yeah. That, I don't know if this is necessarily connected, but both of these movies felt like they, maybe this is mostly a casting thing, because they cast people that look older than their characters are meant to be. But both these movies felt like they had Ben and also the other male characters like Cooper sort of infantilizing the younger characters like Barbara and Tom. Sure. Like, I think Barbara in the original movie is supposed to be, I don't know,
I would say
18?
Her 20s.
Yeah, I think like 20, 22 at the oldest. But I feel like the way they talk to her makes her feel like she's a teenager.
Right.
And I know that she's catatonic for a lot of the movie.
Right. I mean, most of the movie.
Yeah. And we'll get to the 90s one later, but like in the 90s one, he's really like trying to keep Barbara and Tom eventually from seeing any sort of gore. And I'm like, Barbara killed a zombie in the second scene in the movie, and you were there when she did it. And Tom, like, I know he wants to cover up his cousin's body because it's his cousin or whatever, but like he knows that his cousin got shot. You don't have to baby him.
it's a little traumatic. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't not get it, but it's a weird thing that happened in both movies.
Right. So just to kind of like move through this plot and just kind of hit some of the high points of the film. Like basically, they show up at the house. They kill a bunch of zombies
After a very long chase scene.
One scene that the only real flaw that I have with this film that I kind of like checked out for a few minutes. There's a point right before Barb goes catatonic where she explains literally everything that we saw. Like, we drove up to see my grandfather or my father's grave. My brother Johnny really didn't want to do it. And Johnny is a prankster. He was making fun of me, telling me the dead was going to come and get me. And then a dead guy really did come and get me.
Both of these movies, like really let the actors have these like soliloquies where they explain all their backstory and stuff. And it's like kind of interesting, but especially in the second one, it feels very, it feels like overly dramatic.
Yeah, this one was like seriously like her summarizing the movie for like 4 minutes, and then she just goes, it's like she starts going all crazy because she realizes, oh shit, my brother's dead, and that's when Ben slaps the shit out of her, and then she's like unconscious on the couch for like all but the last couple minutes of the movie. Yeah. But you know, eventually after that, she's
conscious enough to hold a knife by the blade.
Oh, that's right.
One of my notes is, has she ever held one? Is she aware that it's sharp?
Ah.
How did that happen?
But Harry and Tom show up, and Ben calls them out, and they're like, "Did you not hear us like fucking fighting all these zombies?" Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, we were downstairs." Well, then how did you know we were okay? And then Tom finally was like, "Okay, no, we did hear you, but we were just afraid."
I think he says, "Don't you know what's going on out there? This ain't no Sunday school picnic."
And then Harry kind of has this dynamic where he's just like, well, we're going to go down here and we're going to lock my wife, my kid, and I are going to stay down here. And like, we're not going to let you in. And Ben's like, dude, you can be the boss downstairs. I'm the boss up here. You're like, either fucking stay up here or get the fuck out of my way. Like, you're causing problems.
Yeah.
So, you know, they make, you know, a few scuffles with zombies, and then they decide that they need to leave. So they decide that they're going to go down to the gas pump and try to fill up the truck, and they're going to try to drive away to a new city and, you know, see what's going on. At the pump, things go bad. They have a torch. So they're very reckless with fire throughout this entire movie. Like, I don't know how they didn't burn the house down, because several
it's 1968. They didn't really understand fire.
But like, Ben, several points, like, he's like, nobody explains how he knows this, but he's just like, oh yeah, they don't like fire. So like, when he first shows up to the house, like, he drags one of the dead zombies out of the house, and like, with just matches, he just lights a zombie on fire. And it's fine. And then later on, he lights like a little chair, like a sofa chair, on fire. Right. And then like, he lights it
gingerly, kicks it down the stairs.
Yeah, he lights it while it's in the house still. Or maybe not in the house, it's like in the doorway.
Yeah.
On the porch kind of thing. And he lights it, and it goes up like, he sprays it with like kerosene and everything, so it goes up like fucking crazy. And then he like just kicks it off, and it's like, how did he not burn this house?
It's probably
down?
made of acrylic.
The whole house is probably just asbestos, so it doesn't burn.
Yeah.
But then like later on, he throws the little torch in the back of the car, and then later on, while they're like pumping the gas, like Tom's like, woo, Zoolander, like gasoline fight, and accidentally like sprays the torch, and it like lights up and blows him and his girlfriend Judy up. And so then like Ben has to fight his way back to the house, and then by that point,
we should note that Ben shoots the lock off of the gas pump.
Yeah, he did. That's right.
Also,
and that's
also reckless and relevant for later.
But he so he ends up having to fight his way back into the house, and then Harry's like not letting him in. And so at that point, that's when Barb decides to not be catatonic, and she's going to help kind of fight off some of the zombies, but ends up getting taken immediately because she sees her like brother zombie, and she gets pulled out into the crowd.
Brother zombie, not uncle zombie.
Yeah. And then the little girl, who we only see like once, like turns into a zombie and like kills her mom and her dad.
The original
Ben goes
Karen.
Downstairs, hides in the cellar, and then the posse comes.
And Karen uses a tool as well. She uses a spade.
That's right.
To stab her
She
mom.
stabs the shit out of her mom.
Yeah. Which felt a little out of place for me. I don't mind that they were using bricks to smash windows or whatever, but every other zombie wants to bite their victims, to bite the humans, and all of a sudden Karen wanted to use a spade. Although I guess like she's small, so maybe she felt like she needed a tool, but
Yeah.
I think that was just kind of there for the shock value of seeing a
Yeah, it
a
was
kid
more like
stab their mom.
something that like out of the crazies makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the movie for the most part.
Yeah, man. We touched on the sellers upstairs argument between Ben and Cooper earlier, and I wanted to point out two things. One, during the whole time that argument was happening, I kept on just thinking like, Cooper can stay downstairs, but they should like. Why is no one arguing that they should stay upstairs and then have the cellar as a backup plan if they get overrun? That seems like the most obvious answer. But I guess it's really about the two like alpha males cockfighting.
But Ben did say that though. He's like,
did he? I don't feel like he did.
Yeah, no, he said he's just like he basically was like, let's do this. There's no way to run. At least if we're upstairs, we can leave or go to the cellar later if we absolutely have to.
I feel like it should have been a bigger argument.
One of the other things, I'm just reading my notes again. There's a point where like Ben is struggling to hold some zombies back with a door as he's boarding it up, and some hands are breaking through. And Tom grabs a knife and he like swings it at the zombie like 4 times, and you just see like chink, chink, chink. It just cuts off the zombie's fingers one at a time. It's just like this movie is gory for 1968. But like compared to what we see at Dawn of the Dead and the Day of the Dead, I was
actually surprised how gory it was.
Yeah, it's nowhere near as bad, but it's for that time period. I could see why it made people sick because you didn't really see anything like that. And
my second point about the cellars and upstairs, I didn't realize this until later, but I think Ben was kind of wrong. I think that was his cardinal sin in this movie. I think they should have stayed in the cellar because ultimately he ends up in the cellar. And he survives until the morning. He's only killed because the militia comes in. The posse comes in and shoots him, because subtext, because he's black. And if he had, a pretty white girl there with him, they might not have shot so fast.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think they were both right. Like, I think he was right in like, well, we need to board the windows first. Like, let's take as few chances as possible. And I think that they do a better job of this in the later movie, in the remake. But a lot of the reason why they get overrun in the newer movie is like they'll get in a fight and all of a sudden you see a zombie turn their head and go, oh shit, there's fucking humans over here. I'm going to go.
There's humans over here.
But I think they both had their merits, but yeah, they should have boarded everything up as quietly as they could and then fall back if they need to.
Yeah. They didn't work together, and I think that's sort of the biggest mistake that the humans make in these movies is that they're more concerned with fighting than listening to each other for 10 seconds.
And there's definitely a sense of hubris in it because in both movies, Ben says something along the lines of like, there's not that many of them. I took on 3 of them by myself. Kind of thing. And it's true. Like, and that's the thing with all the zombie movies is people always like, oh, the slow zombies are nothing. But if you're stupid and not paying attention or you get overrun,
and like it leaves such a small margin of error. Like, do you really want that? Why don't you just listen to this other person for a minute?
Right.
Yell at each other.
So I just want to point out like this movie is obviously for all the reasons we've talked about, a very ambitious film. They made this at the time for $114,000, which if you were to make that in today dollars, that's $847,000. So still, no matter what, it's a small budget. This would be a very small independent film, regardless of what era it was made. But it made $30 million back in the 60s and 70s. And so if that were today, it would be $223 million. So it'd be like an independent, like that would blow away anything that Blumhouse does. Because Blumhouse will spend, $10 million or so, a little less on a movie, and then it'll make like $90 million and it's a hit. That would be like if Blumhouse cut their budget by 90% and then did 20 times the revenue they normally do.
Yeah.
Or 3 times the revenue they normally do.
I think for reference, I believe Blair Witch Project is the most profitable movie ever made. And that was made on a $300,000 budget and made back $248 million.
Right. So, I mean, this is pretty damn close to that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really impressive. Like, I see why George Romero stood the test of time. I don't think his movies were as good.
This movie also just holds up.
It does, absolutely.
It really does.
It's other than that, like that one weird scene where it was like 5 minutes of explaining everything we'd already seen in the 20 minutes leading up to it.
Yeah. There's movies made in 1968 that have much larger exposition problems than that. So.
Yeah. So I mean, this was a fun, easy movie to watch. Like it was easy. It was fun.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot.
It's also like only an hour and 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, it's super short.
And
it's on HBO Max and Stars apparently.
And it gets right to the point, doesn't it? Like there's maybe 5 minutes of Barbara and Johnny goofing around at the cemetery, and then it's just action.
Yeah, once that first zombie comes and just bashes Johnny's head against the gravestone, it's pretty much nonstop, except for that one exposition scene that I brought up a couple times. Other than that, it's just
I also just want to point out how good the cinematography is in the first one, especially for a movie that was made for almost nothing. And a lot of
from people who've never made anything.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like really interesting angle choices, like just where they chose to put the camera. That for, being one of the original horror movies, or, a modern horror movie, I guess you can call it. It's pretty impressive. I noticed that there are a lot of zooms, like very Sam Raimi-esque zooms.
Yeah.
That becomes like a hallmark of Evil Dead and like those like really contemporary horror movies. George Romero was doing them back in 1968.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and for just what it's worth, Jordan Peele said this movie like really inspired him to make Get Out. So
yeah,
this is a very, very influential film. So
that
being said,
I was gonna say, just since you bring up Jordan Peele, I was wondering why. Like, I feel like this movie could get remade. I guess a lot of people wouldn't want to do it because they feel like it would be disrespectful, but it kind of seems like something that would happen with all of the, from, I'm doing air quotes, from the woke movies that are getting made just because that's in vogue right now, all the way up to very sincere, racially motivated movies from Jordan Peele that are getting made now because there's opportunity. I'm surprised that there hasn't been like either a remake or a spiritual remake that doesn't reference this.
Right. And who knows? Maybe they will someday.
Yeah. I mean,
like I just think the zombie market's a little over.
So.
Yeah. The zombie market was a little oversaturated for a bit.
Yeah.
So like maybe like after Walking Dead's done for a few years and people kind of let it die down,
God, that can't come soon
back
enough,
like a zombie.
I'm ready for Walking Dead to be done.
Yeah, I started this season. I'm like 3 episodes behind already. So
I'm like 30 episodes behind, maybe 50.
All right, bud. What have you been up to?
Hold on, I wasn't ready.
Oh, I'll go first for once.
Wow. All right. I mean, I'm ready now, but yeah, go first.
Oh,
if you
go
need
ahead. No, go ahead, bud. Go ahead.
By the way, I'm looking it up on my brand new iPhone Pro Max 13.
Brag.
Which might be too big.
Rich.
Well, listen, I had an 11, so I'm not too far behind, but it was an older phone, and T-Mobile is doing this wonderful thing where if you change your plan over to the Magenta Max, they'll give you basically a new iPhone for free. So
nice.
I paid $100 for taxes and got a brand new one.
Yeah, that's not so bad.
I'll tell you though, this thing is fucking huge, man. Like,
it's big.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm committed.
You can make a movie with that phone.
You actually can.
Did you see the commercial?
It looks incredible. The camera's really good.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
And there's like a cinematic mode that
you can
I wouldn't
change the focus on the
I guess
I
wouldn't use it to make a movie, but like it looks really fucking good.
Yeah.
All right. So, what I've been up to, bud, is watching fucking Devil's Advocate.
Nice.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
That movie slaps, dude. It's so much fun.
It's fucking great. I haven't watched it in a long time. I wish it was a remake of something so we could cover it.
And I feel like it should be remade. It came out 1997, so
Is it that old?
Yeah, 24 fucking years. Which is funny because Keanu is like still here. Like, it's weird. It's weird to be alive in 2021. But yeah,
Pacino's still here.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like it's due for a remake though, because it's like it's good, but it's so campy. Campy's not the right word, but it's so like culty and weird. That it could be redone. And there's so many like goofy tropes that kind of don't hold up, like the erotic thriller angle.
Yeah.
That I feel like times have changed enough. It could be remade. So anyway, got excited about Keanu and decided to rewatch the Matrix Trilogy. So we did that.
Nice.
Yeah, the sequels just are not fantastic. I'm excited for the new one, but it kind of made me think like, oh, there hasn't been a good Matrix movie for a long time.
Since the first one.
There have been more bad ones than good ones.
Yeah.
Or bad is maybe a little harsh, but not great ones.
I don't think I'm going to rewatch them before. I'll probably rewatch the original one.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm going to watch the second and third. I don't enjoy those films, the second and the third. The second one I enjoy more than the third.
Yeah, I think you could fast forward to like the freeway chase scene. The freeway chase scene still had a couple moments that like gave me chills. That was like super cool. Norm Macdonald passed away, which is also very sad.
Yeah.
So we watched Dirty Work.
Okay.
Yeah, and weirdly holds up very well.
Good.
Yeah, a lot of fun. And also holds up very well. We watched a Scary Movie.
Yeah, that one's fun. We watched that a couple years back. It was a fun watch.
There's the Doofy character does not hold up.
Ooh, I bet.
Yeah. I forgot that he was in that movie, and then he like popped up on screen, and I was like, oh, this is bad. This is really bad, guys. But I was surprised at how many like legendary lines Marlon Wayans gets.
There's some good one-liners in that movie.
I guess legendary is kind of the wrong word, but like lines that were requoted for years, and not just the what's up.
Yeah, you still get people doing the "was up" every once in a while. Like that still hasn't died 20 years later.
Yeah. Oh, my other big takeaway from Scary Movie was Sean Wayans, who I believe co-wrote this movie. Mm-hmm. Really fucking attractive guy.
Yeah, he's a good-looking dude,
and not a bad actor. I don't know why he didn't. Well, I do know. It bums me out that that movie didn't come out like 10 years later, because I feel like he would have gotten some leading man roles.
Yeah.
And he ended up doing like Little Man. And
that movie sucks.
And White Chicks, and then it was like nothing after that.
No. So I'll just go through a few. I ended up watching one thing a lot, so that took up most of my time. But I started watching the Superman and Lois show, which I wanted to watch a while back because they had the first few episodes on HBO Max, but it was like it originally wanted to be an HBO Max show, but then they used some of the same actors as the CW show, so they made it a CW one. But they dropped all of it on HBO Max this week, and the show's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's an amazing show, but it is by far the best portrayal of Superman, bar none.
That's great.
Yeah,
what's his name? Taylor something?
Taylor
Hoechlin?
Yeah, I don't remember his name, but he is like this Superman's hopeful. He cares about his family and Lois, and he cares about the cities, both Smallville and Metropolis, and he really cares about minimizing destruction and saving the civilians, and then also like really going back to like the comic books and using his superpowers in interesting ways to solve problems. Like one of the episodes, there's a nuclear reactor, and it's gonna blow up, and he needs to find a way to cool it, so he like flies away, and everyone's like, where the fuck is Superman going? And he like freezes like a lake, and then he picks up the giant thing of ice, and he just like goes into the nuclear reactor himself, and he just slowly brings this giant ice thing in to cool it down. And it's just like, and he uses his frost breath to do different things. So he uses his powers in interesting, unique ways.
You mean he's not just punching things?
Yeah,
Wow.
And then he's hopeful, and he's happy, and he inspires people, and it's just like that's what Superman should be. Like if Henry Cavill got even.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you not see the 5-minute cell phone intro of Justice League where two kids talk about shit that we've never seen on screen?
Right, but it's like if Henry Cavill got even like one of the scenes that this Superman has, like Henry Cavill has the look. Like this guy's a little goofy looking, just a little bit, but like he gets the spirit down. Like the spirit of Superman's there. So I honestly I watched all 16 episodes in like 3 or 4 days. Just it was really fun watch.
The thing that bothers me the most about Justice League is that there is, I think, 5 minutes of good of what I want from Superman at the end.
Yeah.
And I almost wish that wasn't in there, so I could just say it's a total wash. But it's in there, and it's like, oh, so you guys do know what people want. And Henry Cavill is capable of delivering lines that someone who's capable of writing them wrote for him, but you just don't want to do it.
Right. You just want that dark Superman.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine wrapped up. Finished that.
Yay.
They really tried for the last season to address the issue with like police brutality in America and everything.
I haven't been keeping up on that at all. How did it go?
It's obviously it's the last season's not as fun, because it does have this grim topic that they address literally every episode. It's addressed on what that particular precinct is trying to do to make policing in America better. So I really applaud them for trying. The show wasn't as fun, but it ended on a really good note. Like the finale was a damn near perfect finale, so that was good. I rewatched Black Widow. Katrina hadn't seen it. She enjoyed it. All the same things that we talked about and brought up on our review, she mentioned. So we did a pretty good job there. And then Why the Last Man is pretty solid on FX.
I've heard mixed things. I haven't gotten into it.
It's not amazing, but what I like about it, like, so the premise is all people with a Y chromosome die. And in the comic books, it really is just like men die. But in this, because it's been like 20 years since the comic ended, they do address that there are people who have Y chromosomes that look like they're women, like, and for all intents and purposes, they're women. They just they never even realized they had internal male genitalia, kind of thing like that. And then there's also some trans actors in there, and they talk about, like, you know, they're targeted because it's like they look like men. And all these people are like, how the fuck is this man alive? But it's like, it's actually a trans person who's like really going through a fucking horrible thing because they can't get their medications and their hormones that they need.
That's interesting.
So the social commentary I've been really happy with on the show. The show's pretty mediocre on the whole, though.
Word.
So,
we'll
but let's get into the 1999. Let's get into the 1990 remake.
Let's do it. Am I summing this up?
You're summing this up.
I don't know why I asked. I know I am. It's almost a shot-for-shot remake, but the female characters have more agency.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty close, and the ending's a little bit different.
Yeah. So just a little background on this one. We already kind of talked about how there was the copyright issues and whatnot. Tom Savini did, you know, the special effects and some of the stunt work for some of George Romero's other films like Dawn of the Dead and Monkey Shines. He was supposed to do the special effects for this one, but George Romero was like, hey, why don't you direct it? And so Tom Savini did it, and apparently, like, it was like his worst nightmare because the studio just walked all over him because he had never directed anything, and unless George Romero was there backing him up, like, he didn't get anything in. So apparently this is nowhere near the movie that he wanted to make.
Yeah, I think you can feel that too.
Yeah, and there's certain things that are like, on the whole, I'd say this was a pretty solid, you know, movie. There were a few things that I thought were a little wonky. Tony Todd was fucking incredible in this movie. I thought he was.
I'm not sure
really
I agree
good.
with you there.
I thought he was really good in this.
I feel like he felt like he was on Broadway or something. It felt like he was on stage in a play.
I think he was just matching what some of the others were doing. Because, like, initially I was really annoyed by Johnny in this movie. I'm like, God, this fucking, like, the opening scene, I was like, this is going to be terrible. The acting is atrocious. But it ended up being Bill Moseley, who was in Repo, and he was the really annoying older brother that I mentioned was, like, awful.
He's also in the House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah, he's
trilogy.
in a lot of it. Yeah. But he, God, he just overacts everything. And I was like, I don't know if I can watch this movie if it's going to be all, like, this level. And luckily it wasn't.
Yeah, but some of it is.
Some of it is. Like, the guy who plays Harry in this one, Tom
You mean Tony Soprano?
Yeah.
Oh, there's zombies out here. Oh!
Yeah. He had some moments where he was good, but for the most part, he was very, very over the top. The guy who played Tom, same thing, had some moments where he, like, gave a genuine, like, real performance, and then other times he was over the top. And I think, like, seeing what Tony Todd did in Candyman and other films that I've seen him in, I feel like he was just trying to make his performance somewhat mesh with the melodrama that everybody else was doing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he had some great parts. I don't think he was terrible or anything. It just felt like he was in a different movie sometimes.
Yeah.
There's one movie where he's like, there's one part of the movie where he's like borderline on his knees, like yelling "Con" at this guy.
Yeah. I think it's more when he's interacting with other people. He's not as good. But on the whole, this movie's identical.
I was just thinking, you mentioned Tom. Tom's the kid, right?
Yeah.
Right. He's like 19 or 20 or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think I liked him better in the first movie too, but he's different enough where it's kind of, you don't need to compare them.
Right.
But the first one feels very like he's Dick Grayson, and then the remake feels like he's like Nightwing. You know, they make him like really edgy.
In this, no, I felt like this one was like more like hokey, like country bumpkin, like, oh gosh, my cousin went to the cellar and he got killed and came back, and my God, it startled me. Like,
I guess I feel like in the first movie he's just so like, I mean, it's 1968, but he feels very very white bread. You know, he's got his tight little shirt on, and his little like salad bowl haircut,
Yeah.
little Lloyd Christmas haircut.
In this one, he just seemed a little like neurotic. And granted, he has every right to be neurotic. He's like on his family farm, and like all of his family is dead, kind of thing. But some, just to hit what we mentioned, the women having more agency. Barb in this one is like channeling Sigourney Weaver. Well,
they kind of do the opposite thing, because in the first movie, Barb is the protagonist and then takes a back seat to Ben. And this one, it opens with Barb, but Ben, is a protagonist, and then it kind of goes back to Barb, and she becomes.
I'd say like they share it. It goes back and forth. Like there's enough scenes where Ben is gone, like when they're going and getting the gas and whatnot, and
sure,
then and then the stuff after, like the ending goes on a little bit longer. But she, she starts in this like really frilly, conservative dress, and then very quickly, like she kills her first zombie, and she's just like rips off the dress, and she's just in like a white tank top, and like it really, and short hair. It really reminded me of Ripley from Alien.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really good example of wardrobe reflecting how a character is changing internally.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's, throughout the whole movie, she's like demanding like to have an equal say on what things are going on. When Ben and Harry are like arguing and same thing, like, I'll be the boss up here, you be the boss down there. And that dynamic goes even further in this movie. And we'll get to that. But like, she's like, hey, like maybe stop yelling at each other long enough to like fucking figure something out. Like zombies are fucking coming, they can hear us, like quit fucking screaming at each other, like let's do something. Like anything's better than nothing, but let's just do something. And then when they decide to go and do the gas pump thing, this is the scene that I vividly remember. This movie is the first zombie movie I ever saw when I was a kid, and I vividly remember when they shot the gas tank. As a kid, I was in like second grade, I was like, don't do that, and then they did it and it blows up. But I vividly remembered that part of this movie.
Yeah, and I thought that was like there's a few moments in this movie that I think are better than the original, or just make more sense. They're updates that make more sense. And George Romero probably knows that too. He was probably rewriting it like, I kind of blew that part, let me fix that here. And that's one of them. I remember in the original, he shot the gas tank, and I was like,
but at least in the original, it was a rifle, where it's like it's a single bullet. It's gonna go where you point it, and he had it like right on the lock.
Oh, is this one a shotgun? I didn't notice that.
This one's a shotgun. This one's a shotgun.
Yeah.
So like at least in the first one, I'm like, that's risky, but like it's a little bit more real. This one they use a shotgun, and like a little pellet hits the hose, and even that makes sense. So the hose has a stream that hits the torch that lights the whole thing up.
Yeah.
So like this one was like the guy being an idiot, but it was more like an accident.
Yeah.
But I liked that. No, that was more realistic.
Yeah.
Some of the other things I liked was like the conflict between Ben and Harry was a little bit more like pronounced. Like there's a point where like, the Harry's wife is just like, wait, you heard these people scuffling and fighting zombies and you didn't help?
That's in the first one too, though, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Harry's wife in the first one is it's kind of a badass though. She puts him in she tries to put him in his place. She talks back to him and stuff.
She talks back to him, but like in this one, she like does it multiple times and kind of shames him and like kind of beats on his chest, like get the fuck up there and help them.
I mean, it's probably more pronounced in this movie, but I feel like it definitely happened in the original.
It did, but I felt like it was, I felt like it was more like her having like a false sense of moral superiority by just being like, hey, you have to help, but not really pushing the issue.
Sure.
Where in this one, she was like, get your ass up there and help them board the windows.
Sure.
And like, there's a scene where he goes to like help and he like hesitates and then eventually he does do it. So it's like there are moments where like Harry's like, oh, maybe I should be, a helpful guy. But then there's also points like I think that Ben is more rounded in this movie, because there's a point where like Harry goes upstairs and he watches the TV and it says like what's going on, and he's coming down the stairs and Ben just assumes he's taking the TV down to the basement and like attacks him, and then the TV ends up busted. Yeah. And Harry's like, you fucking idiot, like I was just bringing it downstairs so we can use it.
I think that's another area where this movie sort of improves on the original one, where they make a better point. We're talking about like how Ben would have survived, or maybe everyone would have survived if Ben had just said, okay, well, let's go down to the cellar later, but keep it as an option. This movie does a better job of detailing the cockfight between the two of them and how it actually ends up hurting everybody. So I feel like in the original, it's more like Harry's the bad guy and Ben is the good guy. Although on the flip side of that, excuse me while I argue with myself, This movie makes Harry way more of a villain. And he gets his comeuppance at the end too. But I was kind of like, oh, he's like hitting his wife and like being a piece of shit. And he makes a couple good points like with the TV or whatever, but he's also like he's much more of a villain in this movie.
He could have said something as opposed to being sneaky. Like I understand why Ben thought that.
That feels a little messy filmmaking.
Yeah, and then like, and Harry is much more of a dick in this one. He also like doesn't really like tell them any of the information that he got from the TV. He also like doesn't help out when they really need it. He kind of like lets them struggle.
He's more smug. I think he's almost the same level of a coward, but he is
he's
more
in a
smug
tuxedo.
Well, that's another question that I have. What the fuck is Harry's family doing?
Well, I think they were probably at a funeral or something.
Do you wear tuxedos
to a funeral? So,
and also the little girl's in like an Easter dress.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they were just having a dinner party or something down the road because they mentioned they were going to drive. In this one, they say, I don't think they said it, but they mentioned there was like big city like 5 miles away, and that's where Ben came from. He's like, it's a fucking war zone out there. Like, don't go over there.
The tuxedo is just like is a choice, and the wife doesn't look like she's going to an event where men are wearing tuxedos.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But in this one, like the other thing is like with like when Ben goes to get the gas with Tom and his girlfriend. Well, the girlfriend is like, Judy is like, I'm gonna go. Like I'm a better driver than you, and Tom's like, no, it's true. Like she's been driving trucks since she's like 4.
I was yelling at the screen. Like nothing about what Judy Rose has done in this movie has told me that she operates well under stress.
Right. No, that's fair. But like, and they go and take care of it. Obviously, that blows up. In this one, Harry tries to take the gun from Barb and also like isn't letting Ben in, so like Ben has to like break down the door to get back in, which ultimately causes more issues because like more zombies are breaking in. The other thing I liked about this movie was like there was like waves like throughout the movie, like one point of entrance would fail and they'd have to go and get it up, where they're like, oh shit, there's hella zombies, okay, we're just gonna put in 2 nails for now and then we'll go back and reinforce, and then like as they're reinforcing one, another one failed. So it's like, and Harry's like kind of smug at certain points. He's like, you see, I fucking told you. Yeah. And so it's like, you do see a little bit that he is kind of right, which you pointed out. But they end up getting like a gunfight at the end. And so like Harry shoots Ben shoots Harry, and they both get shot like twice. But Ben ends up same thing in the cellar, goes down in the cellar, ends up having to kill, a couple of the zombie, he has to kill the wife and the daughter zombie. And he hangs out there, and then Barb gets out. Like she
yeah, and she leaves the door open. Ben is not in the cellar at that point.
Yeah, I don't know why she did that. I wrote that down too, and I'm like, he's just like, go, goddammit, get out.
And then she leaves, and the look on his face is kind of like, I thought you understood that I needed the door closed, though.
Yeah, like, give me a fighting chance. Yeah. So yeah, he has to go and like fight a bunch of zombies. This was the part that I hated about the movie. So she goes and like runs away, and she like goes and hides somewhere, and then eventually she sees like the same kind of posse as the last movie with the cops and everything. But we get like, no joke, of 5 minutes of just zombies zombieing about. Like you see them wandering in the field, and you see them wandering around in the house, and you see them like out in the field again.
There's the heroin zombie.
Yeah, like all these, with the needle sticking out of its arm and whatnot. It was like 5 minutes of that, and I didn't understand. I feel like they're like, oh, we need to get this to about 90 minutes so we can make it a theatrical movie. It felt like they just padded the movie.
Some of that also feels like Savini being like, I have all these great creature designs. What if we had a zombie that did heroin? Yeah.
Well, and to his credit, one of the things I actually really liked about this, and probably more than most other zombie things, was, when they're at the cemetery, one of the zombies that attacks has, you see him, and he's like walking, and like his clothes start falling off, and you see from behind that they're cut open, and that's like what they actually do with bodies in the funeral. They're not lifting them up and pulling them, the clothing around. They literally just drape the clothes around and like kind of tuck it underneath them to make it look like they're wearing clothes.
Right.
But yeah, like funeral homes don't actually dress your loved ones completely. Yeah. So I actually thought that was a really, really cool, nod that like, here's a zombie that's freshly dead at a funeral home, and like you see his butt and everything because his clothes are ripped open on the back.
Yeah, isn't it funny that we have funerals for people, and we're like, you get them embalmed, you get them all look all nice, you buy this expensive coffin, you have a big event where everybody comes and they say all these nice things. Somebody throws the dirt on, you go around a circle, there's more dirt, and this big event that is, the dead person doesn't care. It is purely for the people who are still living to have a nice memory of them. And the reality is that they're they're inside of this coffin with their ass hanging out for eternity.
Yeah. So it's like, I thought that was a good nod. And there's another one that like his chest is like stapled shut and everything. Clearly had like an autopsy or something.
Well, did you read that they, for reference for the zombies,
Nazi death camp footage?
Yeah, they looked at like forensic evidence and autopsies, and then in the Wikipedia description that we both read, it's just like, and also Nazi death camp footage.
Yeah,
I was like, I think the first two things would have sufficed. I don't know if you need to.
Enough.
I don't know if you need to subject yourself to fucking Nazi footage.
Death camp footage. Yeah. Well, and the thing that's like interesting about this one, like compared to some of the other, like Dawn of the Dead, is way more gory and graphic than this one. And they, like Tom Savini's like, well, I wanted to be more respectful to the original, which to me I thought was kind of funny. It's because, well, clearly George Romero was totally fine with the gore in all of his subsequent films. Yeah. Like, it seemed a little odd.
He also was a producer on the movie.
Yeah, and I thought this was like maybe a TV movie. Like, it looks like this could have been a TV movie.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, because it kept fading to black, right?
Yeah. But no, this was a theatrical movie. Like, it only made like $5 million on a budget of $4 million.
Where did you watch this one?
I watched this on so I got a trial for AMC Plus.
Okay,
and it was on AMC Plus.
The one that I watched was through Spectrum, but I think it was on AMC because it had the AMC watermark on the bottom right. And I have a feeling that maybe the transfer that they got, or the print or whatever that they got, is from 1990 or the 90s. And it was edited for TV. Like, maybe they didn't cut anything out, but maybe they just added commercial breaks.
Yeah, like maybe because you watched it on Spectrum, maybe it was the AMC version that had commercials and they just didn't have the commercials in it.
Yeah. I mean, the one that you watched faded to black at certain points.
I don't remember if it did or not.
Okay.
I wasn't paying that much attention. I also wasn't watching. I went out of town this weekend and watched it on somebody else's TV that wasn't like as nice as mine. Like, it was
this
a giant.
Man is committed to the podcast.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, Katrina went to a baby shower and I was just at the friend's house that we were staying, so I just watched the movie while they were doing the baby shower thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the zombies. I kind of liked the more realistic approach because, like, you look at the modern stuff, like, they just have to go extreme and go gore. Like, Walking Dead is, how gross can we make these zombies look? How can we make them, like, they were sitting against a fence so long so their skin went through the fence. Like, this was just like, no, these are like actual dead bodies. And even this one, like, they picked up a brick at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I was still like, I would have liked to see if they made them just the more simple zombies again. But
I thought it was interesting how similar these zombies look to the Walking Dead ones. Again, like, not very much has changed.
Yeah.
And
but it's a solid movie.
Yeah. I think my big, it was okay.
Oh, the end. We didn't say
it was
the end
solid
of the movie.
enough. Right. And I was getting to the end. I think my big issue with the movie is the end. I feel like I didn't like the end either. Yeah, I think they wanted to do a message like the original movie, but maybe they felt like, why have the same message? Let's change it up a little bit for the remake. And it's 90s, so there's a lot of I don't know what wave of feminism that is, but there's a big push of that in the early 90s. And I think they wanted to make it about sexism. So they sort of transferred the message over to female empowerment, right? But I think that in doing that, they are actually disrespecting is a heavy word, but I think they're taking away from the message of the original one about the experience of Black people in America. And that's like still a very real thing in the 90s. Well,
and I think the
and they made it about a white woman, so they made it like a white centric thing. They made it White Woman's Instagram by Bo Burnham.
Right. Well, and so the end of the movie, what essentially happens is Ben ends up in the cellar like he did in the original one, but he died from his wounds of getting shot and he turns into a zombie. So Barb goes with finds like this posse and she's like judging them, like the toxic masculinity, because they set up a little pin and they have like one guy's like fist fighting the zombie and then they've got some of them hanging from trees and they're like shooting at him. Like, they're just kind of fucking around with the zombies.
Are they bikers or are they rednecks?
I think it's supposed to be just like the rednecks, like in the original movie.
There are
like
definitely some biker bros there. Like, those dudes listen to Metallica.
And then the sheriff, by the way, was the guy who played Johnny in the original movie. Mm-hmm. But she's with the crew and she's like, okay, like I've let's go back to the house and see if anybody survived. And so they show up and they open up the cellar, and Ben comes out as a zombie. So, unfortunately they have to shoot him, and she's all sad. And then Harry comes downstairs like, hey, you came back. And she like blows him away. Yeah. And she blows him away.
No,
and they're like,
you
she's
do
like,
it as Tony Soprano.
I haven't actually watched The Sopranos.
What?
And I've never, it's on our list.
Podcast over.
We're going to watch the movie that's coming out later in a couple of weeks, and then we're going to watch the series.
Nope. Wrong thing to do, friend.
I was going to do that, but that's what Katrina wanted to do. I'm
going to have a conversation with Katrina.
So I was like, should we do this? And she's like, no, let's just watch the movie, and then we'll
Has she seen the series?
No, we have. Neither of us have watched The Sopranos.
This is a separate issue that we'll discuss off air.
Right. So anyway, but yeah, so she kills him, and the thing is, it's just like, how the fuck did these, like, the three guys that were in the house not hear some guy go, hey, you came back?
Yeah.
And she shoots him like cold blood. Like, that's cold blooded murder, and she's the heroine of this film,
which is equally as bleak as the original movie.
It is, but it's also like,
it was kind of brutal.
You're the hero of this movie,
right?
Like, I don't know. I didn't agree with that. And to your point of like maybe the feminist message would have been better if this was written by a woman or directed by a woman. But this is like two men who have been doing like horror films and gore and macho and machismo stuff for 30, 40 years, writing a female character. Maybe they weren't the best choice of people to make a feminist movie.
Yeah, I mean, just don't make it a feminist thing. Maybe update the plight of the black man in America for the 1990s.
Right. And I'm fine with like they gave her more agency and whatnot. Like, that's perfect. But like, yeah, it's just weird that you kind of undercut everything you did. Like, I didn't have a problem with anything they did with Barb until they had her kill a dude in cold blood. Yeah,
and that's not to say that like Harry might have deserved that. Like, he arguably caused the death of the last few people by not killing his zombie daughter, and he was a coward the entire movie. But that doesn't change. That doesn't change the fact that Barbara did it in cold blood at the end of the movie.
Right, and it's like, to his point, like we said, like, he was technically right. Like, the cellar was the safest place. Now, granted, like, and then they find that the funny moment is they find the gas key, right, as Ben realizes he's gonna die.
Yeah, I like that.
But like, I feel like Harry was a dick, but he was ultimately going like, I'm looking out for my family first and foremost, and like, you guys are putting my family in jeopardy by making all kinds of noise, all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, he wasn't a good guy, but I wouldn't say he was an evil dude. Like, he was just like, he was a coward and only cared about his family. But it's like, dude, you're in a situation where the dead are coming, and this is day one. Like, this has never happened before. You don't understand. Nobody knew about getting bitten. Like, that's not said. Like, getting bitten turns into a zombie. He had no way to know his daughter was gonna happen to his daughter.
Sure. But he also like cares about his family, who he slaps in the face without a second thought. You know what I mean?
Well, Sean Connery said it's not the worst thing in the world to hit a woman.
I think that
I'm kidding, by the way. Like, that's a fucking terrible thing. Sean Connery's a fucking asshole for saying that.
And I think I'm not arguing with you. I'm saying that the movie is maybe not super well written. And I think that it's, it's funny because it's also written by George Romero, but in the original movie, I think the character of Cooper or Harry is much more relatable and understandable. Because I think in the first one, he really is just like, I believe that character is just looking out for his family and trying to make the best decision with the information that he has. And he's also kind of a hard ass, and it's hard for him to work with somebody who A, is another rooster or alpha or whatever, and B, in 1968, white man working with a black man. That makes sense. Yeah. In the remake, it's kind of like he's more of an asshole. I think he's a worse person, so it's harder to feel bad for him when he gets killed at the end.
I also don't think anything he did is justified getting killed in cold blood.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we're getting into like capital punishment at that point.
Anyway,
and that's like not what the movie's trying to talk about. That's why it's not well written.
It's just, the ending is a little weird. And so like, this movie, when it came out, was like panned. It didn't do very well. Obviously, it only made $1 million, but by the time you factor in pretty much anything, like, this movie didn't make money realistically. Critics score on Rotten Tomatoes 68%, audience 66%, and that's with over the last 10, 15 years, it getting a little bit more of a cult status, and people saying, actually, this is actually a pretty solid remake.
Yeah.
So it has better reviews. It has better reviews the further away you got from it.
Sure.
Like, I
think part of that is
okay
also, I think part of that is Savini becoming a fucking legend in the horror community.
Correct. Yeah, between
I don't
all
know
of
that
his...
I don't know that his subsequent work makes this movie any better, but I understand why people are more
people
enamored
like
with
him.
it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, take that for what it was. Both these movies were worth watching. Do I think the original should have got a remake? Absolutely. I totally understand why you would remake that movie. Is this the best version that you could get? Absolutely not.
I would really like to see like not this guy specifically, but like a Denis Villeneuve type person do a remake of this.
An auteur.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't want to get into an argument about that phrase with people on the internet, but maybe art house is maybe a better term. Maybe it's worse. I don't know. But somebody with that sort of vision that comes from that place.
You know what? Give Frank Darabont, give him another shot. He was supposed to show run Walking Dead and got fired after the first season.
Yeah, he did for a minute.
Yeah, give him a shot at this.
Yeah,
but
maybe not
movie.
Another old white man.
That's fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. Good call. But yeah, I mean, it's a solid movie. It's worth watching. Both of these, I think, are definitely fun watch.
I think that Night of the Living Dead is a movie that could get remade every 15 years by some new, young, socially minded art house horror director. Like, give them a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, check it out. Alex, give us your plugs.
Yeah, I'm on. Wow, let me take that again. I'm on the.
Take it again.
I'll do it whenever you stop talking, buddy. We're leaving all that in. No, don't leave it in. I'm on Instagram at dyslexic.
I'm gonna leave it in.
Motherfucker.
I'm gonna leave it in.
Are you gonna leave in talking over me every single time I start?
No, I'm done now. Go ahead.
I'm on Instagram at dyslexic, DYS Alex IC. I'm on Twitter at Polishi, and I'm most active currently on TikTok, where I'm not doing any movie related stuff, but I'm having a lot more fun than those other social medias. So come check it out. And that is also that's actually at Polishi. Two Polishis, two names that you can't spell. PULISCI X2.
All of it's linked below.
And if you'd like to follow what I'm watching, I'm on Letterboxd at Polishi.
And you guys could check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at MDXpods. And if you want to support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/MDXpods and get early access, exclusive content, shout out.
Access.
And that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.